For the longest time, I thought being a professional meant controlling every outcome. So every detail basically had to be planned, finalized, and a contingency had to be covered just in case. I'll admit that if anything changed, I felt like I had either failed somewhere in the process or I found myself extra neurotic in the next moment. But over the years, I realized that there's a big difference between being prepared and potentially missing out on opportunities. And that difference can really change the trajectory of where your success can lead you. So, this last week, we had a hair show. We were working with the Justice and Soul Foundation, which is a nonprofit to help at risk youth and victims of sex trafficking by teaching them how to do hair. You may have heard me talk about them before. They are actually a Seattle based organization. I personally will be hosting a really awesome hair competition this coming October. So, if you're in the Seattle area and interested, please comment down below. I'd love to hear from you, but I find any way to get involved with them. And there was a local salon that was hosting a different kind of hair show. So, of course, we signed up, agreed, and said, let's get some models ready for the run. However, the show just happened to be on a Thursday, and we were asked to participate once we already had fully booked days. So, on paper, we thought we were pretty prepared. We had our inspiration, somewhat of a direction. We did have our models. Obviously, we had wardrobe. We had the general idea of what we wanted our makeup to be, but we hadn't fully finalized the look. And the day of the show, we were actually working our models in between clients. So we didn't really have a whole lot of time to practice, rehearsal, any of that. I actually also ended up staying late leading up to the week just to prep the model's hair color. And full disclosure, I had my bleach and tone not go the direction that we wanted it to go. And that threw me for a loop because I didn't necessarily had time to re-bleach it and make it do what I wanted it to do. So I definitely had to pivot. And that seemed to be a theme throughout this entire show because every few hours, something was evolving. And of course, it stressed me out because, you think I'm falling behind, but realistically, the collection was just finding itself. And my colleague Anna and I were just kind of flowing. And the way that everything flowed and just kept happening actually reminded me of a shoot that completely changed the way I worked. And I think is really where I learned how to just lean into the flow and allow creativity to evolve. So I wanted to share that with you today. Back in 2022, I had the opportunity to shoot with someone I had wanted to work with for a very long time. Icon and legend Nick Berardi, who, if you're not familiar with, is an amazing hairstylist, a phenomenal educator, and an iconic hair photographer. I got connected with him with a great friend and educator, Stephen Moody, who I just happened to be down in Los Angeles taking some one-on-one classes with him. And I mentioned to him I wanted to work with Nick. He got me in contact with Nick, and we coordinated to actually do a shoot that same visit that I wanted to submit for an upcoming color competition. The stars were absolutely aligning and the pressure was on because I have two icons basically working together, deciding, yeah, we'll let this kid work with us. So I flew my dear friend and one of my favorite model muses, Effie, down to LA to be my model. I had prepped her hair color, created this beautiful combination of blues and yellows. I think I had recently gone to a Van Gogh exhibit, so I was really just inspired by the blends and the colors of Starry Night. I know it sounds really cliche, but I wanted to kind of bring that to life in motion. So that was the direction that we went. If you're interested in seeing them, I'll add photos at the end of the video. But the idea was get the perfect color photo to win this competition. And I was on that mission. However, Nick's an all-in kind of guy, which means if you shoot with Nick, you have all day to shoot with Nick. So I packed an enormous suitcase full of hair pieces and just additional looks that weren't fully complete, but I had this idea of what exactly I wanted to happen and how everything was supposed to go. I pretty much had every minute planned. So day of the shoot, we start exactly as expected. We jump into makeup, we discuss wardrobe. Immediately, Nick looks at my wardrobe and he's like, I'm going to a loft next door where he has a designer friend and starts pulling some different pieces. They were very, very cool. So I'm just rolling with it. And I'm like, okay, yeah, if this is going to shoot better, I believe you. And I'm trusting the process because honestly, this guy, like I said, total legend, but his photos win stuff. So That's what I was going for. I was going for this win. And we start shooting and we create this very beautiful, soft, ethereal color images that I absolutely loved. Like he really understood the idea of like the blurring and the flows that I wanted. But a couple hours in, it's time to move on. And Nick's like, all right, what are we doing next? So I open up the suitcase and I start pulling out all these hair pieces I'd brought. And he goes, you know what? I really love the color that we're working with. Is there any way we can do something else with it? Can we expand it? Can we add some texture? Just for reference, Effie has amazing hair for precision model work, for color model work, because she likes to keep her hair short, but her hair is really fine and very low density. So he knows when he's asking me about expansion or texture, it might be a long shot. And not only that, that wasn't really part of my plan. It wasn't part of the schedule in my head, but something in my gut was like, you have wanted to work with this person for so long. They know what they're doing. Maybe just lean into it. So I was like, hey, yeah, her hair doesn't hold texture very well, but I do have this really cool technique that I like. It takes me about an hour to get it set, and then we'll need to let it cool down for about 15 to 20 minutes, but we can do it. Now, again, I had like 8, 9 hours set aside to work with him. So he's like, all right, yeah, let's do it then. I remember because he's like, great. Do you like chicken sandwiches? I'm gonna go get us some lunch. And we're like, great, you go grab lunch. I'm gonna start working on the set. Now, this is a very fun set that I learned early in my career where you basically just take small hairpins and you weave small sections around the hairpin, take a flat iron to heat it up, let it set within the hairpin, and then you can pull it out. And it creates this really cool, kind of kinky texture that can make any hair hold. The process on her hair takes about close to an hour because I was taking some pretty small sections. So he left. I get to weaving. I'm almost done setting the hair when he walks back in and he looked at the set and immediately he was like, holy shit, whatever that is, we need to shoot that. I thought he was totally kidding, but he was dead serious. And I was like, hey, she needs to cool down though. Like, so do you want me to take the pins out? And he's like, no, I want to shoot exactly that with the pins in. I love the pins. That is a cool set. So I finished wrapping the hair, threw in some hairspray just so it kept setting, and he started shooting. I mean, and he starts shooting. Like this man got in a flow. He was having a great time. Like it instantly turned into a party in there. Suddenly he's like, all right, now start pulling a few out randomly, not all cohesively or uniform. Just start pulling some out. So I pull some out and then he starts shooting some more. And then I pull a few more out, more photos. Eventually, we removed all of them to have this really beautiful afro looking style that was really beautiful because it did shine and showcase through the color. The evolution at each stage continued to look cooler and cooler. And somewhere in there, he's like, you know what? Don't take this the wrong way, but this is cooler than any competition image. And he's like, do you mind if I talk to my friend about this? She works for a magazine. I think I can get this printed. And I'm just like, sure, why not? These images aren't what I was planning on submitting anyway for this competition. He says to send them in when we're done shooting today. So I'll edit them, but we need to name it. Like, what are we naming this collection? And the first word that came into my head was unraveled. And so when I said it out loud, he was like, that's perfect. Unraveled. I love it. Yes, a genius. And so we continued to shoot. We wrapped up. We didn't end up shooting anything else. And I came to find out that magazine his friend happened to work at was actually Estetica magazine. And it turns out they were putting together an international editorial on texture. And our images fit in perfectly. So it was the day that I got a really cool international publication, which is funny because I walked into that shoot thinking I needed a national competition photo, and I ended up on an international magazine. That was the day that just changed the way I worked on set or in any kind of event. Because I realized that had I insisted on sticking to my original plan, the opportunity would have never existed because it wasn't part of my plan. I would have been so focused on my destination that I couldn't see a better road opening up right in front of me. And so preparation got me there, but the adaptability created wider opportunities for me. Fast forward to this week, and guess what happened? Everything went wrong. Like I mentioned, the bleach and tone didn't lift the way that we'd planned. And normally I would have panicked, but instead we dried it, we looked at it, we realized that it was kind of living at that really beautiful level 8. And she has that perfect cool skin tone that can wear anything. So it weirdly looked beautiful on her. Instead of fighting it, we actually toned the rest of the hair to complement it and softened it. If you're interested in that formulation and what that looked like, I'm happy to talk about that this coming week on TikTok Live, where we do Formulation Live every Wednesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Pacific Standard. What else? What else? One of our models decided to cut bangs and forgot to tell us. Cool. So that giant finger wave we were going to do no longer worked. But it was fine because instead we took those bangs, we took more hair, and we created what was more like a veil wet jeweled look that paired really well with her updo. It was probably a stronger design than the original one anyway. We then realized that we weren't going to leave the salon nearly as early as we had planned. Again, old me would have spiraled. Instead, we trusted our models. We got them to the venue. They did their rehearsal runway walk. They got dressed. They set up in our prep area. Effie was actually one of my models for this, and we've worked so many shows and shoots together. She knows how to run the show. She actually works in production and shows herself now also. So, it couldn't have been the best case scenario. And not only that, but it actually gave them a moment to kind of become a little team behind the scenes also. So by the time they hit the runway, they were like vibing. They really weren't just models that were showcasing something together anymore. They were like proudly standing together like a team. And our collection honestly became better because we allowed it to evolve. What was originally going to be a red lip turned into a glitter lip with black jewels. When we were originally going to put tinsel in some bangs, we ended up again using black jewels because that's what would stick and we had time for. Our collection actually became better because we allowed it to evolve instead of forcing it to stay exactly as we imagined it. And that's kind of the lesson in this, is that people often think that trusting the process means lowering your standards or just completely giving up. And it doesn't. Your standards should always stay incredibly high. Your preparation should stay high. Your discipline should never lack and also stay incredibly high. But what you should be open to staying flexible with is your attachment to one specific outcome. Because sometimes the haircut tells you where it wants to go. Sometimes the color tells you what it wants to become. Sometimes life closes the door you planned on walking through because there's another one opening 5 feet away. You'll never see it if you're too busy trying to force the first one open. So here's what I hope you take from this long cat rant. Slow down, pay attention, be prepared enough to pivot, trust your experience enough to redirect, and remember that creativity isn't something you control. It's something you continue to collaborate with. And some of the greatest opportunities of your career may be hiding inside the thing that didn't go according to plans. So keep the standards high, but loosen the grip, because you never know what masterpiece is waiting on the other side of, oh shit, this wasn't the plan. Check out the Justice and Soul Foundation at the link below. Message me if you're interested in upcoming Hair Wars competition where you can shine individually and you can showcase your best work in one of 4 categories while supporting an amazing cause. And I will see you next time when we have another conversation that's not about a blow dryer.